Hey, Husker fans, it is 24 hours before kickoff and Hoth, Nebraska Rutgers, on the ice planet. It'll be 15 degrees at kickoff, maybe it'll be 12. Maybe it'll be 8. And there'll be a 3-foot wall of snow lining the field, I think, as you guys enjoy the Big Ten Network's production of Big Ten Crossover Week. Hello, everybody. I'm Sam McKewon, along with Evan Bland from the Omaha World-Herald, Big Red Today, and Omaha.com. This is the Pick Six podcast for this week. It is December 17th. We are 8 days from Christmas, and we're talking about Husker football playing a regular season game that, as I try to imagine in my memory, a game that was odder and maybe without purpose more than this one. This might take the cake. The Huskers are 2-5. The Scarlet Knights are 3-5. They're playing in a manufactured game called Big Ten Crossover Week. And Nebraska has to play on the road because they lost at Minnesota. Lost to Minnesota last week. If they'd won that game, there's a chance that Rutgers would be here in Lincoln. But unfortunately, Nebraska spit the bit against the Gophers and lost. And so that leaves us in this moment there's really no win situation for Nebraska going to Rutgers. Hideous conditions. No one will enjoy playing in that. If they win, they beat Rutgers. If they lose, they lost to Rutgers, and that would be a problem. So, Evan, how you doing? Before I read the sponsor, how are you? It was signing day. It was signing week. You did great stuff. How you doing?
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm good. You did too. It's always good to be on the other side of signing day, and signing day is cool though, right? Like we talk to these kids as they go through their process every year, and it's always a cool day. Even in this weird 2020 pandemic when these guys couldn't make trips and we couldn't see anybody, like it's always super neat to see them sign, to see a dream realized. It just never gets old. Every year, it's a lot of fun to do that. So it's a grind of a day. Yesterday was a little less dramatic than pretty much any, but yeah, happy to be on the other side of it. We got at least one game here left, and kind of exhale a little bit on what's been this season. But yeah, I'm hanging in there. I'm not really a coffee guy, so I just live off of exuberance and enthusiasm. So just kind of have to.
It's Dunkin' Donuts, regular blend.
There you go. Nice.
I'm a Dunkin' Donuts coffee guy.
How are you hanging? I mean, you're balancing two beats. Football and basketball's going on. I mean, you're juggling here.
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, basketball. Those dudes are good, and they, the season is kind of. I mean, we've got great help here with Dirk Chatelain, and I've covered every game but one, and Dirk will cover the game tonight against Doane. We're recording this on a Thursday, and. So they're good. Their season, and we'll talk a little bit about this. I don't know that we're going to have another podcast before they play Wisconsin, which is a little unfortunate. But their season's about to get really, really hard, and there's some pretty big questions for that program this season. That team, not the program, but the team, and they're going to have to tackle those. We'll see. I just know we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. I want to remind everybody our sponsor is Team Schwalbach. The Schwalbach Agency is a family-owned Allstate insurance agency with 4 licensed insurance pros, saving thousands of Nebraska Husker fans money. They sell homeowner, auto, life, and flood insurance across Nebraska, and they also insure all the big boy toys. If you've got snowmobiles right now, get them out. Motorcycles, boats, RVs, off-road vehicles. We'll probably see a couple of tanks in Piscataway trying to get to the stadium. If you've had your roof replaced in the last 5 years, give Darryl Schwalbach, Kyle Schwalbach, Nancy Mostek, Kyle Murdoch a call at 402-590-5200. They're going to help you save a bundle. Free, no-obligation insurance reviews and quotes. They're going to make sure all Nebraska fans are properly protected. You can reach them at 402-590-5200. That's 402-590-5200 or www.nebraskaallstate.com. That's www.nebraskaallstate.com. Thank you to Team Schwalbach and the Schwalbach Agency. Let's start with signing day. We did a signing day recap video, but we'll hit a few more things that came from it. You wrote a great story earlier this week about Thomas Fedoni. And I think every recruiting class needs a couple of guys in it who represent the big ticket item in the class, the guy that you kind of expect to be one of the war horses over the next 4 to 5 years. And in your reporting of Thomas Fedoni, it would appear that at the very least, Fedoni has that kind of mindset.
He does. I mean, he does not mince words. He feels like he's going to be the best tight end at some point. He even in his breakdown of why, Iowa wasn't the school for him, he said, yeah, Iowa's decent. I wanted to go to a program that could be better than decent.
Wasn't decent.
Yeah, I mean, just it's great stuff. And as you know, I spent a lot of time in Council Bluffs in Southwest Iowa, and where he's from in Missouri Valley is a blue collar town. I mean, the folks there work hard, and this is a guy who grew up just outside of that area. I mean, those folks, they're grinders, man. Whenever I would go up there, that's been the case. And so he comes from a family of grinders. He comes from a family of Italians, quite honestly, from Italian heritage that wear their emotions on their sleeves when it comes to Husker games and have that passion. And so he grew up as a part of that. But I think with his recruiting, it's notable that he is not at Nebraska because of that. He's at Nebraska from separate evaluations that he did on his own that went into where he would go. He loves Sean Beckton and what he's seen as far as how he's developed guys that have gone pro. He likes Nebraska, and he's bought into that vision that Scott Frost has put out about where this program can go to. So, it helps obviously that he's a huge need at that position, that he'll fill that at Nebraska going forward. But he's somebody who too, maybe his story would have been a little bit different had the pandemic not played out. He would have taken visits to LSU. He would have gone to Georgia. He would have gone to Notre Dame. And who knows what might have happened on that. But for all the ways that the pandemic might have hindered Nebraska in this 2020 class or this 2021 class, this is an instance where it absolutely helped them. He had a relationship with the coaches. He has been to campus, 5 or 6 times before the shutdowns. And ultimately, he's at Nebraska, and he's got a chance to, have a pretty special career.
I'm not sure it did hinder him. I think it helped him.
It might have.
I wouldn't say that. I think everybody in a pandemic situation views the pandemic as a hindrance in some way, shape, or form. But like the people who decided back in March to invest in Peloton, it didn't hinder them. Peloton did well in the pandemic. I'm sure they would say it was hard for them, but they did well, right? Like, I mean, that's the home bike thing, by the way.
Zoom too.
More and more people. Yeah, Zoom. I mean, I don't know that Zoom's had, I'm sure it's been hard, but of course their product is being used. I think Nebraska didn't get out over its skis and start falling in love with players that may not have been a great fit for Nebraska. Unlike 2020, when very late in the process, Nebraska pursued a whole bunch of guys, and I'm not sure, well, we already know that most of the 5 of the guys from Florida, 3 of whom were fairly late commits, 4 of whom were late commits, they've already left. And I think there might be a couple others from that class, whether, late additions, who may not be great fits. I don't think this class has a lot of bounce guys.
Yeah, I agree. Well, here's a number for you. I was doing some research on just some attrition and why this is a regionalized class. So Frost's 2018, 2019, 2020 classes, they've had 19 guys in those 3 classes combined leave early with remaining eligibility. Right. You want to guess how many of those guys are from the Midwest?
4?
0.
Wow.
0. Nobody who is signed from the Midwest has left Nebraska. There were 11 from Florida, and the vast majority were from a coastal state, somewhere on the East Coast, maybe down in Georgia, California. So it's kind of what we talked about on our signing day breakdown a little bit, where Nebraska, kind of like you said, they weren't overreaching in this class. Sure, they still offered roughly 400 guys, but as Scott Frost said, that whittled down quickly. You end up with something more of a regional class, and it seems like this program needed something just a little more stable, right? This doesn't feel like a boom or a bust class. This feels like a kind of fill in the gaps sort of class with guys that you can rely on moving forward. Like we mentioned the other day, most of these guys have been committed for months and months. There was no last second convincing that was needed for any of these guys. No one felt uncomfortable or unsure as they signed their letters of intent. So I just think, as much has been made of finding skill positions farther away and of official visits, I do think the pandemic did clarify the process, not just for the coaches who had maybe a smaller pool to work from, but also the players who aren't going to get as caught up in kind of the hoopla or the flash of an official visit or fan attention or whatever. It's kind of old school. You're talking, even if it's on Zoom, you're talking to a coach, you're building a relationship, you're taking a virtual tour. This is a lot. Emotions play into it a lot less, I think, in this class than maybe has been the case before this.
Yeah, and we got to tip our cap a little bit to the state of Nebraska and the state of Iowa for producing good local talent, because obviously Nebraska didn't have to go as far this time.
Mm-hmm.
They got 5 guys from the state of Nebraska. Am I right? So Harburg, Kearney, Rollins, Prohaska, and Kobe Bretz.
Bretz, yeah.
So 5 of those. They offered 7. So Keegan Johnson, it signed with Iowa, and then Avante Dickerson. Right. Who knows, right? So they offered 7 guys in state, I think. Maybe I'm missing somebody in there, but they got 5 of them, and they might get Dickerson. I don't think Dickerson delayed signing with Minnesota yesterday because he's certain about Minnesota. Maybe Minnesota said, hey, we don't want to take your signature, but that would surprise me. I think Minnesota would be willing to let it ride. And then in the state of Iowa, they picked up Henry Lutovsky, Seth Malcolm, and Thomas Fedoni. Now, I happen to think all 3 of those guys are good football players, but Nebraska offered 8 or 9. I mean, they offered a bunch of guys over there, TJ Bowlers and Tyler Marrow and Brody Brecht and some of these other guys. And, one went to Wisconsin, one went to Iowa State, one went to Iowa. You're not going to get them all, but you got 3 of them. And then you got 5 from your own state. And I don't think Nebraska would have not offered those kids if they didn't think. I don't think Nebraska's in the business at this point, in Scott Frost's 3rd-and-a-half class or whatever you want to call it, of offering kids in state just to offer them. I think they probably could have offered James Carney earlier, but once they saw the film, I think they wanted to offer him, and they wanted to make sure that he was going to take the offer before they offered him, and then he, threw it back in their face. But I think everybody they offered, they wanted. And then they got a kid like Alex Bullock as a walk-on, and, I mean, Alex is a guy that, I could envision being a scholarship player in 2 or 3 years. I mean, I think he's that good. So I think they benefited from having good players in the Midwest. That helped them. They're going to benefit from the exact same thing in 2022. I mean, I don't think the crop in Iowa is going to be as good, but I do think it's going to be even better in the state of Nebraska. Nebraska's offered already 5 guys, and I think they could offer 7 or 8 by the time this thing is all said and done. You got to look at the quarterback, Zane Flores. I don't know. Maybe he's a guy, maybe he isn't. But there's going to be an opportunity to offer a bunch of kids in state again. And then I think Iowa's going to be decent. And then I think Kansas. This is going to be a good year in the state of Kansas, and Nebraska might be able to pluck 3 or 4 guys from down there. And so I think it's benefited them that some of these Midwestern kids are getting a little bit better in talent. But I just don't think they got out over their skis. The one guy in the class that was like, who is this guy? It's Jalen Weaver. He didn't have a phone. Nobody was quite sure if he was going to sign yesterday. He did. I don't think anybody's really ever talked to him. I don't think Scott Frost has probably ever been in the same room with Jalen Weaver. But then you watch his film, and that even makes it a little more confusing, because you watch the film and you're like, why doesn't this guy have 50 offers? He's really good and he's big. So you just don't know. But that's like the one wild card in the class for me. Like everybody else, and maybe Malik Williams, the corner out of Georgia, is a little bit of a question mark. But everybody else in the class, I think, is, pretty solid. Is there a guy in the class that you're like, maybe not the best player, but the player you're like, this guy could go either way, but it would be really important. It would be really helpful in Nebraska if he was really good.
Well,
Does that make
yeah,
sense?
well, maybe give me yours, and I can kind of see where you're going with this.
Taking a drink of my coffee. Well, I'd look at two positions. First of all, I think it would really help them if Gabe Ervin was a really, really good player.
Sure.
Not just because I think he could be. I think he's got an interesting skill set, and he's bigger, and he looks a little bit like Divine Ozigbo. I mean, not entirely. I don't think he's probably got as good a hands, but similar. I think it would really help because I think they need somebody to emerge in that room who isn't just a bring-along guy. And by bring-along, I mean somebody who, by the end of their third year or fourth year, you could, well, they brought him along. He's pretty good. They need someone who doesn't need to be brought along. They need someone who can come in at that particular position and be good, like right away. I'm not saying Jonathan Taylor here. Boy, it'd be nice if you had one, though. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying even Tyler Goodson, although it'd be really nice. And they probably could have signed Tyler Goodson. I don't know how much they recruited him. They decided to go after some other guys, but I thought Goodson, who was a freshman last year, was pretty damn good, and he is good. I mean, he's a first-team All-Big Ten guy, and I don't know how much they pursued him. But, boy, it'd sure be nice if you could get a guy like that in here, and maybe Gabe Ervin is that player. The other position that I think about, and again, I'm talking about guys that could go either way, not a can't-misser like Fedoni. Boy, it'd sure be nice if the potential of a Latrell Neville or a Sean Hardy or a Camonte Grimes paid off into a player who, again, did not need to be brought along, but came in here and kind of like Xavier Betts has, caught 15, 20 passes in their first year. Not two. They didn't work their way up to 20 catches by their senior year, but they came in and they caught 15 to 20 right off the bat, like a Niles Paul or a Xavier Betts. That would be nice. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I first of all, I agree. Like the skill position stuff, I look at some of the other schools in the Big Ten or even just in the nation and see like how often do you look and you see a freshman running back or a freshman receiver breaking onto the scene?
You do see it. That's the thing.
You see it a lot, and you don't see it a lot at Nebraska. And
that's right.
That would be refreshing to see if this class has someone like that. And it's kind of unclear.
Exactly right. Not on the lines. Not on the lines.
No, skill position guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're overdue, and Wan'Dale Robinson fits that bill. Okay, so we don't want to say they've never had it. And Maurice Washington fit the bill. He left, and he couldn't. Yeah. He wasn't mature enough to stay in the program. But Maurice Washington was one of those
guys. Yeah.
They need another one of those guys who also sticks around.
So that would be helpful, right?
Yeah.
But I think beyond that, Raekwon Buckley is a guy that's interesting to me. He was a national recruit. Another guy I think who would have really visited a lot of places and gone around and maybe benefited, at least as far as Nebraska is concerned, with
I agree.
Relationship and bringing him in. But he's somebody who, not right away, but in a couple of years, especially when this next crop of D linemen move on, he's going to be important that he pans out and can fill some of those vacancies along the line here down the line. I think James Carney is another interesting guy, not just for what he does at tight end, but because I think he could actually play a lot of different spots for Nebraska at some point. We've seen what Nebraska has done with some of its other tight end recruits, Chris Hickman to receiver, Cam Jurgens to center. And just seeing Carney, like he played a decent defensive line. Not that that's necessarily where he would end up, but you never know. He was a pretty good blocker too. He could split out potentially eventually as well. And just one of those guys who obviously loves Nebraska, has a deep history here. He's going to do whatever the coaches ask him to do. He's not high maintenance in terms of where he should play. So he seems to me as someone who has that kind of physical versatility as well to play somewhere and seems like somebody who's going to fill a need for Nebraska, maybe at tight end, maybe elsewhere, in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think AJ Rollins is a candidate for defense too.
Mm.
I think Fedoni and Carney would make a really nice combo. They can do. They're slightly different players, and so I think they were very fortunate to get Carney. And they offered a little late, but they landed him, and again, they could get Avante Dickerson, and we've become a little whatever to the hype train. But Avante Dickerson, let us just say that if he gets with Travis Fisher and Fisher really, really teaches him up, that's a good player.
Who's
the best player in the class? He's very fast. He can be the best player in the class.
Who's the guy in this class that you feel like you know the least about? Maybe not personally, but just
Weaver.
like it's Weaver. Okay.
Yeah. And Malik Williams.
Yeah. Williams was pretty quiet too, I suppose, out of Georgia there. I think Camonte Grimes is one for me, where he hasn't really spoken a lot. A lot's been said about how smart and versatile he is, but I don't feel like I have a great sense of him either. It's been an interesting class because there have been a handful of these guys. A handful of these guys have been really outspoken peer recruiters. Your Heinrich Harburgs and your Latufskis and things like that. But then you have a number of guys who have said very little. And it doesn't mean they're not solid players or they're not going to be really good players. It just means you kind of forget about them, I think, because they don't speak up and they're not in social media and they're not doing the interviews. But I think, Grimes is one of those guys. Gabe Irvin, I don't know, has spoken much at all either. We've seen some great tape and he's been killing it in the playoffs with his high school team. But I think that's kind of the other interesting part about this is there are the guys that have done the interview rounds. And then there are others who we really don't know much about other than what their coaches have said and what we've seen on film.
I've talked to people who I trust who think Gabe Irvin's a pretty good player. Malik Williams to me is a question mark, and I really don't know anyone in the that I could call that would tell me much about Jalen Weaver. They didn't play this year, so
right.
It's hard to tell. I mean, I don't think Jalen Weaver played this year, did he? I don't think he did. He couldn't have. He was in California, and I don't think he left.
Yeah, they played in the spring, right?
So, I don't know. It's hard to gauge him. I know a lot about Harburg, but we're going to have to find out what his ceiling is, and Mario Verduzco will have to develop that. Quarterback's a big question. And again, I feel like it's better to keep it for a couple of weeks. I want to see how Martinez and McCaffrey play at Rutgers. There might be a bowl game. You're always looking for that, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like moment, But I'll never forget that the best game that Zach Lee ever played was in the 2009 Holiday Bowl. Best game of his career. And he didn't win the starting job. Because Taylor Martinez deservedly beat him out for it in 2010. And that was one of those moments where, again, like when we look back on it, Taylor got a lot of criticism, some of which he really did not earn, and it was unfair. But Bo Pelini, who made many poor decisions in his career as a head coach at Nebraska, including stuff that he would do with the defense later on in his tenure, that was one of the best decisions he ever made. Is he moved on, he picked the quarterback who could actually help him win games, and he did. And that was Pelini kind of saying, hey, what we've been doing isn't going to work. And I wonder if Frost doesn't think about it that way, but do so in the opposite direction and go find a guy that can throw it a little better, in lieu of not being able to necessarily find a Taylor Martinez. I don't know. Maybe Luke McCaffrey can be that player. Maybe Adrian can get healthy again so that we're looking at a guy that can throw the ball 50 yards downfield like he did at Ohio State. That guy's not there right now. We can move. We'll shift now to the Minnesota game. Once again, there were moments in that game where you're just like, he doesn't, whatever it is that he was able to do when he was a freshman, especially as it relates to throwing the ball with touch and arc and accuracy, is just not there right now. He has 2 overthrows in the game against Minnesota. One didn't hurt him because they scored a touchdown anyway. That was the overthrow to Wandale. A couple really did. One of them to Oliver Martin at the end of the first half, which was thrown on a line. You can't throw that ball so easily on a line because it sails. And then he overthrew Wandale on a corner route. He overthrew Martin on a corner route. He had Martin open earlier on that bootleg play out of the pistol and could have thrown it, double clutched it, then threw it, kind of threw it off the mark. It was a hard throw anyway. He just doesn't seem like the same quarterback who has the arm that he had. And so I don't know. Adrian can run, and he's a good runner. And he ran well against Minnesota. And he plays hard, and he's a good leader. And I think he operates the offense fairly well. He's a reasonably okay decision maker. He's trying not to make turnovers is what he's trying not to do. He had one anyway. But, you know, I just don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
they've got it. It's hard to tell.
And he had that throw, I think, at the feet of Austin Allen too, where it was just kind of fired it in there. He had some odd ones. And
yes, McCaffrey threw one at Allen who couldn't catch it, and then it flipped up.
Well, there was that one too. Yeah, well, that was a different one too. But
that was just this. You know, I don't understand. I think in that moment, I'm sure Nebraska would say, "What were we thinking here?" You know, it's 0-0. We're putting in McCaffrey. Why are we throwing the football?
Right.
Maybe we slow the tempo down. Let's think about what we're trying to do here. What are we doing? I don't know that, and that stuff can happen. It can get away from you like that, and it did in that circumstance.
You talk about evaluating and seeing how Saturday or how Friday goes too. I mean, the conditions aren't going to be such
hideous
that you're going to walk away from that thinking like, "Wow, that was some great quarterback play." In through the air. I don't see that necessarily playing out. And man, if Nebraska were to fall, it
won't surprise me if that game's 16-13. It really won't.
No, it's going to be a low-scoring game.
I think it could, depending on what the wind does. I mean, if the wind is brutal, I understand why the Big Ten chose not to rent domes, but some of these games are going to be played in conditions. Well, let's see. Rutgers, Nebraska is like, and Penn State, Illinois are just like, why games? Why?
Don't you think the Big Ten was regretting what it did with the crossover situation in the last couple of weeks? I mean, it sounded fun in September, but man, what a headache that must have been for them to stretch and to set that thing up. Why not just set that thing previously and, I mean, keep one of your other crossover games? Boy, that turned out to be a mess.
It did. It turned out to be, they should have gone a week earlier and played a crossover week then and just played a Big Ten championship.
They didn't do it.
They didn't do it. And the Pac-12 didn't do it. And there's other SEC games this week. And it's all about TV inventory. It's all about maximizing your TV inventory. This isn't really about competitive joy. It's about how close can we get to the original TV contract so that we can get these schools their money. And look, I'm not trying to be cynical here. The money helps save the athletic departments. It saves jobs. It saves athletic scholarships. It may, in some cases, even save sports at the school. And I know there's a lot of people out there, especially in the national media, who know it all and have a perfect moral compass, who look at that situation with cynicism and like, what are we doing? Well, again, these are opportunities that we're talking about, and you cannot back out of football contracts with head coaches that have already been signed. Okay, so like the whole thing about, you're cutting a sport, but you're paying the football coach $7 million. Yeah, you paid him $7 million 4 years ago. You signed the contract. It's a legally binding document. In an American court of law, they're not going to apply sports writer logic to the budget. That's not how it works. So you don't get to tell a coach, we're going to reduce your salary to $1 million. You can't. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And you can certainly have all employees take mandatory cuts, like pay cuts and things like that, but you can't single one out because they particularly make a lot of money and then sort of morally balance the scales. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. It doesn't work like that. Well, maybe we wish it did, and that up was down and down was up, but it doesn't work like that. And so They had to create the TV inventory in order to get these athletic departments the money they need to run some of the sports they have.
Sure.
And so I understand it. And I understand why football players might be frustrated because a lot of the athletic department budgets do balance on their backs and their willingness to play. And I would agree that coaches are paid too much, but that's a problem that can only be addressed going forward. You can't alter the contracts of these coaches for years on end out of sheer redistributive justice. It doesn't work like that. It just, you can't enforce that in a court of law. So I understand why they did what they did. I agree that the crossover thing hasn't really worked. But I also, this is part of what sustains all those athletic programs.
Sure.
I don't want to see those, and those kids don't want to lose their opportunities.
No, they don't. But yeah, and I think there is some intrigue in this game still. I mean, you're right. Nationally,
Sure.
It means nothing. But that's a program, Rutgers, that has a first-year coach, Greg Schiano. They, by their standards, I mean, that's a good first year for Rutgers. They ended that long Big Ten losing streak. They've won as many games this year as they did their previous two already. And I think it's fascinating because in some ways, Rutgers is kind of going through what Nebraska fans had hoped their first year or two under Scott Frost would have been, where there's an uptick in wins, where you can point to certain aspects, especially on defense for Rutgers, where you said, yes, they're better there, and they're better there with some of the same players because of scheme and coaching and that sort of thing. So I think that's fascinating, too, to see how Rutgers finishes out its first season under Schiano, who, of course, brought them to new heights during his first stint there 10 years ago. How that compares to with what Scott Frost and Nebraska bring to this thing at the end of year three. I mean, if they fall flat in that thing and go into the offseason, 2-6? Man, that's a long, cold offseason of talking about what went wrong.
Presuming they don't play a bowl game, which at 2-6 they might have the option of doing.
Wouldn't that be
and
something?
I think there's going to be some external pressure to have them play. I don't know if Scott Frost wants to do that. He balked 2 different times at playing a bowl game this week, and I don't think he did that just to do that. I think he has a better pulse of his team than anyone else does, and I think his impression is that this team is wearing it.
Well, he said that they'd have to ask the players, right? See what the players wanted to do. That was kind of his answer.
That's right. Well, but there's 2 ways that conversation can go, Evan. There's what do you guys really want to do? No, don't listen to me. What do you really want to do? And we might as well talk about this now because they're going to decide this by the time we have another podcast. You say to the players, guys, look, forget what I would say about this. Forget my thought process on it. What do you want to do? You guys have been here since April or May. What do you want to do? What would you love to do? Do you really, really want to go play in a bowl game and play one more game because you love this sport, or do you want to go home and see your family for Christmas? And make it really plain to them. You can do it that way, or you can go in there and you can say, well, guys, if you guys don't want to play, we won't, but I just want to let you know that, we really fought for this, and we feel like we can get a lot better in this next game, and we feel like another game is just another opportunity for us to get better, and we've got a lot of young players, and that's another opportunity for us. And what do you think the players are going to say?
Option 2.
Option 2. Well, no, the players are going to say, yeah, we'll play.
Yes, for sure.
That's what happens. Like the players are going to take their cue from their coach, and they're going to suck it up. I mean, these kids are good kids. They're going to suck it up, and they're going to play another game.
Sure.
So it really doesn't – I mean, it kind of comes down to the coach or the players, but it kind of comes down to the coach, and how he feels. I think he knows. I mean, his left tackle just left the team.
Right.
You don't think that guy – I mean, I'm sure that guy had made his own decision, sure, because he's going to go to the NFL, but he probably wants to sign with an agent and move on and, get going and not have to wait until after, after the holidays when everything gets going. He probably wants to sign with one now and get it going and figure out where he's going to train and all that. So I understand why he did what he did. But I mean, there's got to be other guys that are like, man, if it were me, Friday they win at Rutgers, I wouldn't go chase. You understand whatever you want to call it, gambling. I wouldn't go chasing good after good. I just wouldn't go chasing house money when I felt like I already had a nice pile.
That makes sense. Double down? Yeah, you wouldn't double down. If they win, you would say that's a good way to end it.
Well, if they win, I think they have the opportunity to say, you know what, guys, we just came into here to a cold hellscape, 15 degrees, and we gutted out a win against somebody that everybody thinks is great. And we made our statement tonight. We're going back, and we're not going to worry about, guaranteed rate field, or we're not going to worry about trying to host, Bilbo Baggins on December 27th or whatever they would think of. I don't, and let's get some, there's so many options out there. There's the, hey, boys, good season. Let's go play at the guaranteed rate field game, or let's go play in the Music City Bowl, damn it. Let's go play Auburn, and let's find out just how far we've come. And then there's the let's have one more game because the NCAA lets us, and since our season's over, we're going to pick a non-conference opponent. And we're going to try to throw 5,000 bundled up fans into Memorial Stadium. There's all those options. I don't know. I don't know what Nebraska would pursue. I'm just saying that it's more up to the coach. The players will take their cue if they're given the total freedom to say, we're not going to tell you anything and you guys can decide what you want to do, then I think those kids it'll probably be a fairly close vote, to be honest with you. But if they go in and say, hey, we're going to do this, then the players are going to say, yeah, we'll do it. And I just think that Frost feels some sort of maybe feeling some sort of expectation that they need to play the game, a playable game, because, well, you fought for football. You wouldn't want to turn down an opportunity. And I just hope that, and if that's the case and his team really wants to do it, then great. I think there's also the argument of, where you were back in September is really not where you are now. And he alluded to it 2 different times this week. He talked about the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. He talked about yesterday. He talked about it's been a long season. Some of these guys are tired. They want to see their families. I take a cue from that. Evan, I'm like, I think this guy really does understand where his players are at and needs to be true to that North Star versus, what some journalist or what some, booster or whatever thinks about wanting to kick back on a Saturday night at 9:30 at night and watch Nebraska play some Big 12, play Baylor or Texas Tech. Because Kansas State's already pulled out of a bowl game. You're not going to get K-State in Arizona.
Yeah.
You're going to get Baylor. You're going to get Texas Tech. You may not get anybody at all. You may get like a team that's in the group of 5 that they got to fill in. You're playing Appy State at 9:30 at night in Arizona. Is that really what you need to do or want to do?
I would be shocked if they said that they were done. And maybe they feel that internally, but man – How much have they talked about the importance of practices that have been missed? They championed football. They've gone through COVID protocols since.
I agree with you.
I would just be shocked if now, with an opportunity to play another football game, have another week of practice and development for a young team, even if it meant they might not win or they probably wouldn't win, I would just be shocked. And how much have they talked about guys that love football? We love guys that love football. Get those guys here.
Oh, no question. Hey, Evan, I totally agree with you. I feel like what you just said is accurate. It's accurate. I agree with you. And I think that's probably the way that most Nebraskans would lean. I think that's probably the way that the coaching staff would lean. I'm just saying that if you left it straight up to the players, I think the players, I think it's just been a long year.
No doubt.
And I'm ready to go whatever bowl game they want to go to. I'm kind of rooting for Music City. I hope they beat Rutgers, and then we go to Music City, and it's on December 30th, and you're playing an SEC team this thing with December 26th, that game down in Arizona, K-State's out. They're not going to be there. I think didn't they drop out of a bowl game? They decided they opted out.
I believe so.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, man, like you're staring down the barrel of playing a Baylor, which they would probably beat Baylor. Baylor's pretty bad. But you're staring down like a group of 5 team that just waltzes into that thing, and I don't know, it could be Louisiana Lafayette, or it could be, Appy State or whomever. And you just got to be, again, if they win on Friday, I think that is actually an opportunity to say, hey, we just made our statement. We're square. If they lose on Friday and they're 2-6, do you think they'd still go to a bowl game?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I think regardless of how they do Friday, they would go to a bowl game if they were offered the opportunity.
Yeah.
I just do. I mean, that is a consistent theme under Frost, not just this year, every year. As much as they can get out there, man. They've kept the COVID stuff, the COVID numbers low. That hasn't been an issue. They've had some injuries, the opt-out and the Colin Miller injury, but mostly they've stayed healthy, relatively speaking. I don't see how they would end it now.
Yeah.
It would go against almost everything they've said for the last year and really under Frost for 3 years.
Yeah, I'd argue the opportunity to call it square is better if they win. Especially if they win if they win it and they walk off that field, because it's going to be an accomplishment to win that game in that setting. No fans, brutal conditions, on the road, a week before Christmas. They're going to be proud of themselves if they win it, and I just feel like it'd be we're done. But if they got to play a bowl game, I'd try to get them. If I were them, I'd try to angle into that December 30th slot versus that 26th slot, because I just think that would be better for the team. To not have basically an entire week, and you basically get 2 more practices in a game, and you're probably going to play somebody that is either a no-win situation like Baylor, or a group of 5 teams going to waltz into that thing, and you don't know what you're getting into, because they might be a whole different kind of, you know what I mean? Like,
do you think they care though? Do you think Nebraska cares who it is? How much have they talked about the nameless, faceless opponent? Like, it's about them. I don't think that matters.
Well, it doesn't matter. It may not matter internally, but I think there's a gap externally between like how fans feel about all this stuff and how the internal messaging, and that, you have to be mindful of that. It's just something worth,
I guess.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and beyond that, again, I think if you win on Friday, it's an opportunity to say, hey, we did everything we wanted to do this year. I mean, this is a team that's banged up. We're going to send them home, and we're happy with everything that we've accomplished. But we'll see. We'll see. It's an interesting discussion, because my hunch is that we're going to hear – I think Nebraska's going to win tomorrow, because I don't think Rutgers will have its quarterback. I don't know that Norvell is going to be healthy to go. I think they're going to win tomorrow, and I think they're probably going to decide to play a bowl game. That'd be my hunch.
I'm not as optimistic that they're going to win tomorrow, personally.
I understand that.
But
I understand.
But the other factor we haven't discussed with the whole bowl situation is what Nebraska could get monetarily. This is as Bill Moose said, they were $40 million, in the red this year, and what would a bowl situation do to that? I mean, maybe potentially
they probably make more because they're not sending the band and all that crap.
Yeah, I suppose.
But if they go into the December 30th bowl game, they will. They'll send. They might do that. There's just a lot there, and if they'd beaten Minnesota and they'd won this week and they were 4-4, and they're looking at playing I don't even know, Auburn, Kevin Steele's crew, for now in Nashville. I think that's a sexy deal. Do it. Try to roll this thing out on a 3-game winning streak. The Minnesota loss, I think, just takes a lot of wind out of the sails. But we'll see what happens. You think Rutgers is maybe the better team here, huh?
I think it's going to be close. I don't trust that Nebraska's going to clean things up. Rutgers has a pretty good defense. As I've been breaking it down, I feel like the defense has the upper hand both ways, Rutgers defense and Nebraska's defense. And so Rutgers has the better special teams too, as I've gone through this thing. And, having to take your longest trip on a short week in the snow, I don't have a lot of faith that they can break precedent and win a close game, but we'll see. Yeah. They very well could. I just think it's going to be dicey.
We'll see.
You want to talk hoops?
I think Nebraska can. I think they're going to rebound, and they're going to play hard. And I think they're going to play hard. I think they're going to rally a little bit.
You say rebound? Did you say rebound?
Rebound, yes.
Do you say that with basketball too? A guy has
that's a rebound.
10 rebounds. Okay. Yeah. I just making sure.
No, a rebound is a noun. The thing you get off the rim.
Yes.
Rebound is a verb.
You would say it rebound?
You can.
As a verb? Interesting. I would say Nebraska would rebound, but
just like it's defend instead of defend.
Yeah. I don't know. I think rebound is in a bit of a different category. I don't hear that one too much, but maybe that's just me. Do you want to talk some hoops?
Sure. You got some. Yeah. They played Doane tonight. Dirk will be covering it. Thank you, Dirk. They're 3-3.
So set up the Big Ten. I mean, this is the last as we've said, the last game they're favored in, right? Against Doane. So kind of set up what
last game they're favored in. Maybe
right?
So.
I mean, isn't it?
Maybe so.
Ken Palm does that. Well, I guess set up the Big Ten. Like how daunting is this, first of all? And then what's like an expectation for Nebraska in this gauntlet, this meat grinder? What would be a good showing moving forward here?
Well, we could certainly talk about that again, also next week. But let me say this: that I think this is a team that a guy came up to me last week at the Creighton game, a reporter, and said, obviously, Nebraska's better. That was the word, obviously. And I think that's probably accurate. This is also a team that is still a work in progress, that got thrown two major curveballs right before the season. One of them was that Adoro Andre got COVID, and now he's back. The other is Derek Walker got a suspension from the NCAA for stuff he did at Tennessee. Both of those things were curveballs, and they did fine with those curveballs through the first 4 games of the year because they had enough good players to be able to overcome some of that. Then they played Georgia Tech. Then they played Creighton. And all of a sudden, some of the things that they were able to avoid against lesser teams were impossible to avoid against Creighton and Georgia Tech. And one of those things is that you don't really know exactly what to do in the post when the opposing team has a pretty good post, and how do you play it over 40 minutes? And so one of the tricky things about basketball, and you know this, you covered more of it than I have, especially just game by game, is that you can 33 of the 40 minutes in any given game spread across 40 minutes, 33 of those minutes are pretty tightly contested. Like it's not like a quarter by quarter system per se. It really is about the 6 or 7 minutes in a game when you just lose control and the better team does what it needs to do. And they win by 21. And then, like in almost every game story you'll see, they used a 17-3 run midway through the second half to pull away. Well, the 14 of the 21 points in the spread was in the 4 minutes that they went on the run. And so, like, you don't look at basketball games. You can look at them like possession by possession, but at the end of the day, there's so many possessions in a game that what you're looking for is those 4 or 5 minutes that are defining. And then what you do is you sort of extrapolate it out and say, all right, what led up to that where you could kind of see one team getting better and better and better and better, even if it wasn't reflected in the score, that led to that tipping point. And I think the challenge that Nebraska has is so long as Walker is out and that Andre is still getting up to speed, you're having to put one of your best offensive players in the post, lat man, guarding a post, which is a physical chore all its own. And then asking that same guy to kind of fill all those gaps defensively and then go to the other side of the floor and suddenly become, Brian Conklin and hit threes and hit 4 of those a game and be that dude. That's hard. That's hard for any player to do. To be guarding Christian Bishop and Ryan Kalkbrenner from Creighton on the defensive end and then go on the offensive end and turn into, I don't even know, one of those, John Teskey or whatever, one of those 3-point shooters at Michigan. That's tough. And so Mahan has been asked to do a lot. I think he has done everything they've asked him to do except express himself on offense and shoot the ball and take more control of a game offensively. He's only taken 6 shots in the last 2 games. I think that's a big deal when Lat Mahan is a guy that can probably hit 40% of his shots from 3. I think you want that man taking about 6 or 7 3-pointers a game because that's 18 points over 2 games right there. And so I think that's one of the issues that they're dealing with. And it's an issue that can't really be resolved until Andre comes up to speed. And of course, he's a true freshman. And moreover, Derek Walker comes back. When you're dealing with that, that's one of the hardest curveballs to deal with. And then I think the other piece is the post play is only going to get better in the Big Ten to the point where the very best posts in the nation play in the Big Ten. And that's just a hell of a task. So Luka Garza, who's the best player in college basketball, can in fact guard in the post and then become that player on the other end who hits a bunch of threes. But he's also the best player in the country. And so, Iowa's found a way to make that work for him. And he makes it work because he's a great player. But, Nebraska doesn't have that guy. They don't enjoy the fruits of that yet. I think they have a potential player like that in Bryce McGowens, but he isn't the same kind of player as Garza. And what Nebraska does have is just they have a lot of versatile, hardworking, passionate players who actually play pretty good defense most of the time. But I think they're susceptible to droughts on offense and about 7 to 10 really poor possessions on defense right in a row because they're tired. Not because they don't care. It's because they're mentally tired.
Why are they mentally tired? Why is that an affliction unique to Nebraska?
Well, it's not, but they only have an 8-man rotation. And because of Walker and Andre being out. And Elijah Wood is not there yet. So he's not in it. And they only have an 8-man rotation. Of that 8-man rotation, one of the guys is not an offensive option at all. Another one needs to hit 3-pointers in order to be an offensive option and hasn't really been doing that yet. And so I think you can on offense, you can get to I got to do something. I got to do something. Here in 18 seconds, I got to do something. I got to take a drive to the rim. I got to do something. And I think that's sort of the mentality that a few of those guys have. And then on defense, they're working their tails off. They're playing really hard. They played so hard against Georgia Tech for so long and did such a good job defensively. And I think what happens is, again, your shots aren't falling. It's a tight circumstance. The other team makes a play. And you just kind of – the wheels just kind of come off for about 3 minutes. And it's not the whole game. Against Creighton, it was about 5.5 minutes. And Creighton did everything that Creighton always does. You can't stop Creighton for a whole game. Nobody can. Creighton lost 89-84 to Marquette, but they scored 84 points in doing it. You have to outscore Creighton. You're not going to – Nebraska played a great first half against Creighton, and they scored 40 points, and they were behind by 4. I guarantee you, if they score 40 points in a first half against Wisconsin, they won't be behind. They won't.
Right.
But that's what I mean, is that, With Creighton, you can have a great offensive first half and you're still behind. And so you kind of knew that was going to come. And what happened is Nebraska just didn't answer it. When they get in the Big Ten, there's going to be some teams like Iowa who are just like Creighton. Like, you can be within 8 of Iowa, and 4 minutes later, it can be a 22-point game. Wisconsin is different. You know, it could be a tie game, and it could, you might lose by 7, but it feels like you lost by 15 because you never got any closer than 5.
Right.
So it just kind of depends on the identity of the league. But I think Nebraska wants to sort of shake off some of the bad vibes from the Creighton game by playing Doan, which they'll do. And I think they also want to get Andre going so that when he plays against Wisconsin, who has 2 very good posts, they're not entirely they're ready. Which, how can you get ready? I do think there's going to be games they can pick off this year, Evan. I do. But shoot, I would have said Purdue would have been one of those games. Purdue. And they didn't go win that. And then Purdue wins by 7 last night over Ohio State. I mean, there's just no easy game.
From what you've seen so far, what's the thing that has to either go well or not go well for Nebraska in a given game versus like what's just a thing that they're maybe not good at? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's something that you realize that they're not going to do versus the thing that could win them games on a game-to-game basis?
Well, it certainly helps if they hit 3-pointers. That never is going to hurt them. They have to, but in order to do that, they've got to take care of the ball. And I think they had 25 turnovers against Creighton. That's not going to work. They were doing stuff against Creighton that I know that Coach Hoiberg would never teach. And again, I think that stuff's born out of impatience and frustration. And a lot of it happened in the first half. I mean, 3 different times on 17 feet away from the rim, and you're trying to do spin moves on Denzel Mahoney. Not going to work. Didn't work. 3 turnovers. All led to Creighton points. Like, it's that stuff. You can't do that stuff. They got to work better on passing the ball without dribbling all the time. They got to move the ball, as Hoiberg keeps talking about. They got to move without the ball because it's hard to move the ball, passing the ball if nobody's moving. So they got to move without the ball a little bit better. Defensively, I mean, they try so hard, and they play very hard. And there's just not any easy way to. And Ivan Ouedraogo plays hard. That guy comes off a screen like he cares. You know what I mean? Like. Yeah. He gets screened and he comes off and he does that. He's on top of that guard as well as he can be. Effort is not an issue. Competitiveness is not an issue. I think focus kind of is, but at the end of the day, it's just hard when you're having to grind that much on defense. Their offense needs to loosen up a little bit because they actually end up scoring a lot of points off their defense. And it's not unlike Nebraska's football team. I think defensively, they're pretty good. I mean, they work very hard. Offensively, they got to make more shots, and they got to do what their coach is asking them to do. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
I mean, they really got to. He's not kidding around when he says we got to move the ball, and he's being honest. Like he's different from Frost in the sense that Hoiberg's template is very. He understands exactly what he wants. And so when he does his post-game press conferences, he talks in that framework really clearly and cleanly so that you understand what mattered to him in the course of the game. And he'll praise and he'll criticize, but the things that he wants is the things they got to do because he understands that the things that he wants makes his system go. And part of what makes his system go is moving without the ball, passing it around. The way Creighton plays, it's the way Hoiberg wants to play.
So, and where does that disconnect come when they're not playing that way? Does any of that relate to the pandemic and them not getting the practices they want with them? Is that just mental stuff?
No, I think some of it's impatience. I think they play really hard on defense. They're not that deep. I think, when you play as hard as they do on defense, I think you're not always primed for offense because you just played your ass off for 30 seconds, and they do. I think they've had 6 or 7 shot clock expirations this season already. Like they play very hard on that end. That things get in half court. I don't know that they're that fast. I think Trey McGowan's is a great athlete. I think Shamil Stevenson is a really interesting athlete. I don't know that I would term some of the other guys as super fast. So like the speed aspect of it, coming off of cuts and rubbing off of cuts and things like that, I still think they're getting there. And they got to figure out a way to get Lat Man going. This team, I think the success and failure of it does to some degree hinge on that dude getting more shots. You're not going to win with – he took one shot against Creighton, one, and he missed it. It's not enough. And they know that. They know it. And they got to get him the ball. They're going to have to set some plays for him, get him around screens. It's going to take time, but so there's aspects of it that are challenging. But again, you watch them and you say they're better. They're not doing some of the really odd things they did last year that showed a total lack of discipline. But what are you going to do? But we'll talk more about them as they get into Big Ten play. They'll win tonight, obviously, but
yeah, it's just an interesting dynamic, I think, because even though they may be obviously better, like the record might not be markedly better. So it's like you have to appreciate the improvement without maybe the external, kind of success that comes with that.
They play 20 games in the Big Ten, regular season games. If they were to find a way to get to 8 wins, I think it would be a real achievement. And I'm not trying to, damn them with faint praise or have low expectations. But, again, any fan want to start counting up what 8 wins would look like, you're starting – if you counted up 8 wins, you're starting to pick off teams that were ranked in the top 20. And that's how quickly you get into deep water. If they got out of the Big Ten with 6 wins, I would say they knocked off a couple ranked teams along the way, and they could say, look, this is progress. Wait till we get Bryce McGowan's, and then you'll see what we can really do. So I think they have the proper perspective down there. And the other thing is, Evan, they got to find a way – if they can, they got to find a way to get fans in PBA because PBA is a big advantage for Nebraska. That's a hard place to play, and it's been weird going to that arena and seeing it empty. It's weirder than Memorial Stadium being empty. Because I think sometimes the crowd at Memorial Stadium doesn't always work for Nebraska. It gets nervous. You know this. Nervous. The expectations are too high. People start booing. Everybody gets a little clamped, as Mike Myers used to say. That doesn't happen at PBA. At PBA, it's a completely different, open, aggressive atmosphere from start to finish. It's not until people start leaving with 5 minutes left. But people don't, nobody gets nervous if Nebraska's behind by 10. It's expected. So, it's just a different atmosphere, and I think they play better at PBA when there's a whole bunch of fans in there, and they don't have that advantage right now. So it's very quiet, and teams don't get pressured by the fans or any of that stuff. Want new picks?
Let's do it.
All right. I'm counting it up here. There were a lot of games not played last week, but we're still even, and here's why. I picked North Carolina. You picked Miami. You picked Virginia Tech. I picked Virginia. We were the same on every other pick.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Ohio State, Northwestern.
Ohio State.
Are you sure?
Final answer.
I'll take Ohio State as well. Oklahoma, Iowa State.
That's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, it is.
I'm gonna live on my heart here and go Iowa State.
OU. By touchdown. Good game. Who's playing the Pac-12 now? USC against Washington?
Oregon, isn't it?
Oregon. That's right.
Yeah.
I forgot. Who you got?
Give me USC. Keep it rolling with the Trojans.
I'll take USC. That was a great game last week. USC, UCLA. That's 2 pretty good teams, I think, personally. That's just me talking. That's just me. Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Boy, two teams that have kind of fallen off a bit, but
I'll take Wisconsin.
yeah, I will too. I don't know what Minnesota's situation is personnel-wise.
What it was when they beat Nebraska.
Well, yeah, but Wisconsin's not
What
Nebraska.
it was when they beat Nebraska. What do you want from these guys, Evan? What do you want?
Just win, baby.
What's your expectation? They beat Nebraska? Anyway. Sorry, I'm being a moron. Cincinnati, Tulsa.
Cincinnati.
WKRP.
Yeah, right.
Tulsa.
Tulsa. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Coastal Carolina. Louisiana.
I'll keep going with the Chanticleers.
Me too.
They're a fun team to watch.
They are.
Really fun. That
Neat
game
offense.
against BYU was unbelievable.
Proud of Joe Moglia.
Yeah.
Joe Moglia. Clemson, Notre Dame. The rematch. This is the remix.
Trevor Lawrence is back, yeah?
Yeah.
I will take Clemson.
I will take chaos. Notre Dame.
Ooh.
Notre Dame wins that game, and Clemson is with 2 losses.
Wow.
I'm taking it from my heart here.
Letting your hair
What
down.
are they going to do? What are they going to do if Clemson loses? No one thinks Clemson's going to lose, Evan.
Unbelievable.
What are they going to do if they lose?
I want to see Iowa State in the playoff, man. I want to live in that world in 2020.
What are they going to do?
Oof.
What are they going to do? They're going to put A&M in there?
No.
All right, A&M, why not? Iowa State?
Iowa
2
State,
losses?
man. If Iowa State beats Alabama, I think they would vault A&M, would they not?
Yeah, they
lost Iowa State team. Let's do it.
But would Clemson stay? Clemson might stay in front of them. I swear to God.
Maybe.
It'd be great. What about USC?
The
USC
ice does.
wins? USC goes undefeated? You're going to tell me undefeated USC doesn't deserve to be in the playoff?
Right.
Chaos.
It would be awesome.
Chaos. Clemson and Notre Dame should not have played the game. Shouldn't have played the game. By playing the game, they guarantee that somebody's getting screwed. Probably. If Notre Dame beats Clemson, Clemson is in trouble.
Yeah.
They should have just canceled it. Maybe they still will. Alabama against Florida.
Alabama. That'd be another fun one if Florida could find a way to pull that upset.
Alabama's a machine. They're a machine. They are.
They
Like
are.
a Borg. You watch them play this year? They're good. Their offense is unbelievable. Like
was it the LSU game where they were like 0 for 1 on third downs in the third quarter when they're up by like 40 points? Like they didn't even get to a third down situation.
They're breathtaking to watch. I mean,
man.
Steve Sarkisian's a good offensive coordinator. He came in here in 2011 and put a clown suit on Bo. Nebraska still won 51-38 because Nebraska used to score points back then. But I think Washington had, 550 yards. Keith Price throwing it all over the joint. Hey, Connor Culp is Big Ten Kicker of the Year. Look at that.
He is.
Look at the blog you're going to get to write in a minute.
Hey-o.
Good for him. Happy for Connor. He deserves that. They gave it to him over Keith Duncan. I like that sauce. I like it.
Yeah,
Good for Connor. Good for him. What an achievement for Connor Culp. Happy for him.
Yep. And he's
Nebraska Rutgers, and then you can go do the blog.
He got his truck back too. I think Rutgers is going to pull it out in a close one. I think it continues the narrative. I'm going to go Rutgers by a couple.
All right. I'll take Nebraska. Hey, everybody. Stay safe out there as you do your final holiday shopping. Thanks for listening to the Pick Six Podcast. For Evan, I'm Sam. Peace out.